Intersex is an umbrella term that defines a collection of conditions and natural beings of a person, be it their gonads, their reproductive system, or their body development, their sex anatomy, which is different from that is considered typically male or typically female. Intersex is also not to define the whole person, but should only be perceived as being part of that person. I had a pretty amazing childhood in many ways, but quite an atypical childhood, so not typically male, not typically female, and yeah, there are consequences of living a life like that.
The way our world is built on man and woman and binary gender and binary sex. So if you fall in between those two areas, it can make things that we take for granted quite difficult. So using the changing rooms in a clothes shop or using toilets in a school. So all those things that we think are normal can be called into question if you find that you don't fit into what everybody perceives to be the norm.
Intersex UK was founded a couple of years ago to raise acknowledgement and to raise a legal change that's required due to the fact that certain people with intersex bodies and intersex conditions may receive treatment incorrectly assigned at birth through surgery, and sometimes the choice of that person to remedy that if a mistake was made when they were babies by medics was not possible, and then they're banished to a life of difficulty and insensitivity and dysfunction and in certain circumstances infertility. Really all we need to know is that, all people need to know is every person in the UK, in fact everywhere in the world, deserves a right of human equality. Civil rights, they're the rights we have in our environment, our communities, and protected by our governments, and we collectively need a broader spectrum of rights which covers surgeries, medical treatment, legal allowances, marriage, adoption, etc. Those rights needed to be afforded to everybody. The reality is the best thing for a person with an intersex body, unless it's for a life-saving purpose, is to leave that body and let them develop naturally, and they will define their gender and their sex and who they are as human beings. That should never be defined by somebody who is guessing.
I have an intersex condition called complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, which means I was born with XY chromosomes and gonads, which are testes. When I found out about my condition, I was 16. I was sort of feeling a bit alone, and there wasn't really anyone out there, and I couldn't really find anywhere to talk. So I set up a Facebook group and a YouTube because I wanted to reach out to people and get them to know that they're not alone, so they can talk to people and just see that there's other people out there with the same condition.
I don't think that that people with different sexual development is ever going to mean the end of gender or sex. I would hope that it would change people's thinking towards it, and that it will be a push forward to think about things differently.
If you look at gender closely, it's more of a social construct. Everybody plays a part in creating gender.
I believe that gender is a kind of spectrum and a kind of performance in the way that Judith Butler talks about gender.
So society is already divided enough as it is. Why are you creating more divisions? Male, female, intersex, and then other people are going to invent other little categories that can fit in between. So at the end of the day now, we might end up with all 50 different categories. Because I believe now that my little section ain't been catered for, so we have to have a new name for my little category.
It's not about what should be, it's about what is. And there is a huge continuum. That doesn't change necessarily one's identity, one's gender identity, or their female sex or their male sex. But ultimately, most people, not all, but certainly a lot of people with intersex conditions define as male or female. Some people with intersex conditions also define themselves as somewhere in between male and female.